Hello and welcome to Radio Lotion. It's Michelle today, and today we're doing a little bit different than usual. Obviously, everyone knows me from my show Offside, but today we have a little bit of an awareness campaign that's going on within my school. So I've got my classmates, I've got some interviews going on, and essentially our campaign is about the femicides and what is happening around the world, which is really, really tragic. Essentially, femicide is the violence and the killing of a woman specifically because of her gender, which is outrageous if you do ask me. But so I just wanted to talk about this a little bit on the radio today. And I've got my co-host today, Belkisa, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Belkisa. Nice to meet you all.
And then we have Kitty and Deborah, if you guys want to introduce yourselves too.
Hiya, I'm Kitty. This is my first time on this side of the mic, so it's very exciting to be here.
Hi, I'm Deborah. I'm excited to be here and get into the conversation.
Yeah, and I just wanted to introduce you guys and, get you guys to interview because you guys are the most perfect people to interview, essentially. Women's Association as well, and Kitty, just amazing person in general. But yeah, the first question that I wanted to ask you guys is, when the topic of femicide does come up, what emotions do you feel personally, and how do you process or express them?
This is the first time I've ever heard this term when you've sent me these questions, which I think is really interesting. Like, I'd never heard the term femicide before. So yeah, it was interesting for you to send me that question and then to read about the term. I think it doesn't come up that often that people are kind of asking me about, like, how I feel about violence against women. But obviously, so normally it's more just hearing stories in the news or things that have happened to people that I know. And so, yeah, I think generally my emotion is just like rage.
Yeah.
I have quite an angry reaction most of the time.
I would agree to that.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I think the difficult thing is, in this day and age, because there's so much information and so much content online and in general, I find myself going through like motions of going through waves of emotion, where it's like I feel really angry and really frustrated. I feel sad. In some moments I feel hopeless, and then it's like you scroll on your phone and you see like another post about something completely different, and it just feels so wrong. It feels like this shouldn't be stood next to what I just witnessed or what I just listened to.
Exactly.
But then at the same time it is, and so the wave of emotions of like seeing the horrors that exist in the world that should have never existed and should not exist right now, stood next to the everyday person doing the everyday thing. Yeah. So it's really hard kind of to process the emotion because it just goes away so quickly. Yeah,
it's just like we just get on with our normal lives while this is happening on the other side of the world. And I think even for me, it's just, like, it's so sad. It's so sad. And or for example, like my friend here, Benji, like we always send each other stuff about the news or like what's going on, and then we're just like, why is this happening? And I think that's what this campaign is about. We're trying to find the root cause. We're trying to find our target audience, for sure.
Usually on the other side of the world, but this kind of stuff happens like next to where we live. It's not that far away, even physically removed from where we all are, which is even more worrying.
Yeah, it's everywhere around us if you really think about it. But I just feel like there's not enough awareness to it. It's like, here's another person that's been murdered, but why? Why are they being murdered? Why are people like this? What's the structure behind it? And that's what we're here for today, essentially. And my second question: do you remember when you first realized the violence against women was not just an isolated issue, but part of a wider social pattern? Like, did you understand why this was happening or where this is coming from, like misogynistic views and stuff like that?
I think for me, I've always lived with the understanding that it exists, whether it's growing up and seeing parents, friends who are navigating violence against women in the home, or hearing conversations that maybe I shouldn't have heard when I was young, that my parents are talking about their friends or what people that they know are dealing with. I think for me, one of the biggest issues is that it's ingrained in the way we experience the world. In every system we experience, women are positioned as less than men.
I agree.
And so in that situation, it almost feels like there's a lot of systemic kind of redoing that needs to happen, but people need to appreciate that the systems don't work first for us to then go into actually changing it. But I just feel like in every area, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, whether it's family, like home life, or in the workplace, there's a constant idea of the role a woman plays, and that role is always lesser than a man. And then when you then look at the violence against women, more times than none, it's because of the positioning, and because women are positioned as weaker, and so some men feel like they can then take advantage of that positioning and exert their power and their control over a woman. And so so I feel like I've always been aware of it. I've become more aware of it since I've built the Women's Association, since I've spoken to so many women. It exists everywhere, whether it's someone that gropes a woman inappropriately on a train, to a husband that's unhappy with the football scores and beats his wife because of it, or like it exists everywhere. I don't think there's anywhere that we don't see this, but people are so quick to say, I don't do that, not all men, or like I'm not part of it, that we then brush over the actual issue because we're trying to now protect,
or boys will be boys, that thing as
100%, and then we then go into trying to protect the image of the good men and the good boys, as opposed to focus on the actual issue and why people do it in the first place. And I don't think anyone really wants to have the real conversation of why does this exist and how do we stop it.
I agree. Well, it's mainly because of those positions in power, because of those men that want to be seen as good, essentially. And like even in my other interviews I had a sociologist teacher, and basically he was talking about the structures within society. So essentially like education, households, like family, and it doesn't start randomly on one day. It's you learn through what you see around you through socialization and everything like that. So even essentially like family, which will be brought up later when I ask a different question, but it's really important, and especially like the hierarchy within every single institution that you're in. I was talking about the workplace earlier on, and I know that some women didn't want to speak up because they know that they wouldn't be heard if something was said and because the manager role would be usually male, or CEOs, or just even schools, like the head teachers or teachers is ridiculous. But yeah, Kitty, do you remember the question that I asked earlier?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think similarly, I've always been aware of it. I think the first kind of subconscious clocking in for me was more like, all my friends lived really close to each other when we were kids, and so like we would be allowed to kind of walk home from each other's houses and things, but always that warning of like, even when it's a 10-second walk away, my parents' friends would walk me home, maybe they wouldn't walk my brother home, or I'd be told like, be really careful, you know, keep your keys out, all that kind of stuff, from the age of like 8. So I guess that's the first kind of feeling that there was violence and that I needed to be careful. And then the awareness that like it was a systemic problem, I think, happened much, much later for me. I don't think I just hadn't put that much thought into like why this is the case. It's just like, I need to be careful. And obviously like there has been more in the media in recent years and more discussions about it. It definitely wasn't talked about when I was in school. But also interestingly, like I studied history at university, and I studied the like Jack the Ripper case in detail.
I agree.
And I went into like that was the first time I'd kind of looked at violence against women from a historical lens. And what's so interesting about that case is it's like the origin of it's the first time we see in writing the like blaming women for violence culture. The story of Jack the Ripper that lots of people know is that he murdered some prostitutes, and
it was a prostitute's what's it called, fault, right?
Yeah, it's a prostitute's fault. I'm using the word prostitute in a Victorian term, by the way. Only one of the women was officially a sex worker. That is proven historically. Only one of the women that he murdered. We don't even know if it was one person that committed all these crimes. But anyway, in the story. And I just think that's so mad. And when you relook at the stories of these women and where they came from and what they were doing, and this way that, you know, this wave of crime happened, and the immediacy back in those days, and still now, with which the government and the police just went like, how can we paint this in a way that it's their fault? And it's not all men. It's not going to happen to all women. It's only going to happen to women if they're lower class, and
Or
they don't look after themselves. They dress a certain way. They're on the streets, and that hasn't changed. I think that was so interesting, and that was the first time I kind of was like, not only is it a systemic issue today, the origins of it from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, thousands of years ago, I think are really, really interesting.
Yeah, even for me, even in secondary school, learning history, I took history, but obviously not as the level that you took it. But it was like telling us how women were basically kept as passive, or having like masks around their face if they do something wrong or something to like not show themselves. It was just incredible. I was like, what is going on, and why would it be like that? Almost like, again, like an object, like they're not humans. How can you dehumanize them and even treat them like animals? And you shouldn't even be treating animals like that in the first place, right? But even for me, even my experience when I was little, I remember my mum always being careful. As a single parent family, my mum was always like, be careful, I don't want you to go out. Even now, at my age, she doesn't want me to go out. She's really scared. She's like, oh, my little baby's just gonna go out and be doing everything. She's like, no, you need to have this, your location needs to be on. And obviously it's annoying for teenagers, oh, my location's on, but it's her growing up in this world, in this society that we live in, that she's like, no, I want my daughter to be safe. And I remember almost like coming upon like a real one time, and it was like somebody's worst fear was having a daughter in this society. And that shows how much that like impacts people, to not want a daughter, not have a child, because they know what kind of society we live in, essentially. But yeah, it's incredible.
There's like an argument as well saying like, my mum would always tell me like, oh, it's not that I don't trust you, I don't trust the world. And she constantly reminds me like, there are dangerous people out there, and we should always be careful. We shouldn't trust people as easily as we should. Yeah. And also as like women, like of course, like we have that nature of being kind and thoughtful, but we always have to be careful and not trust everyone as we should.
Yeah, and even like recent news, having seen it, I'm like, what? There is no way that this is really happening, and that these are the people in power. These are the people that we're paying taxes to. I'm like, it's disgusting. It's disgusting to me. But my next question was, how are conversations about violence against women handled within your own community or cultural background? Is it openly talked about or avoided altogether?
I think for me, I've come from a Nigerian background. I think it's spoken about openly, but it's not that they're not encouraged to resolve things. I think it's kind of like anytime I've heard these conversations happen, it's people speak about it, they say how they feel, they say what they think about it. There's a general consensus that it's a very bad thing, but then at the same time it's kind of still hush hush. Like if you know someone that's actually going through it in the home, you're just expected to put up and just like, don't worry, things will get better. And I even had the conversation with my mom like not too long ago about this, and I was just like, it's crazy how her generation from my experience, Nigerian women are expected to just keep going. And it's like, no matter what you're going through in the home, just stay married. And there's very few that actually say, I'm going to leave the marriage. Majority of them, there's something like the idea of marriage has become their identity. And so without marriage, it's kind of like, who are they?
They lose themselves.
100%. And so they'd rather stay in an abusive situation than deal with the reality of finding themselves again, especially when they get to 50s, 60s. But other than that, I feel like a lot of the stuff that happens in the world, like that we see online, where women have been subjected to violence, women have been killed, I don't think that's discussed enough. I think people see it, they feel something, but they don't allow that feeling to then materialize into conversation, because I think a lot of people feel powerless. Like, what can I actually do if I have this conversation with a group of people?
Until they get into a situation like that.
And then they want everyone to speak up for them. So it's so unfortunate, but I just feel like because we're fed so much content consistently, it's easy to overlook things. I think the reason why George Floyd's murder was a moment that a lot of people from a lot of different cultural backgrounds came together at the same time is because we were all kind of standing still because we didn't know what was going to happen because of COVID. And we very rarely have moments like that where everyone's eyes is on the same thing at the same time and everyone's outrage is at the same time.
Do you think that shows the power of ordinary people in society itself?
100%. And I think personally that the overload of content is almost does a great job of us not seeing our power and coming together collectively enough, because just as I might be outraged by femicide and the reality of it, someone else is outraged by the fact that there's something else happening in another, kids are being kidnapped in a certain part of the world. Someone else is outraged by something else. And so it's very rare that we're all focused on the same thing. And even then, the next layer is us coming together about that thing. And then the next layer is us act like, when I look at the women back in the day, the women's rights movements, they weren't sitting on their phones texting their outrage. Like, they were out on the streets marching and they were doing whatever was needed to bring attention. But now it's like the equivalent of that is commenting on a post and saying like, this is horrible. So
agreed. Did you want to say anything?
That's how they keep us subservient, though, isn't it? Constantly bombarding us with so much tragic stuff and horrible events that it feels like we don't have time to band together and properly take action against how much is going on.
I agree. Kitty?
Sorry, can you re-ask the question? Because I've got like many thoughts from that.
It was, how are conversations about violence against women handled within your own community or cultural background? And do you think it's talked about enough or avoided altogether?
I think pretty much avoided. Like you were saying, it's kind of an open secret sort of thing. I think, like, I don't know if it's a class thing, but it feels like very middle class for it to be quite othering. Like, I think the idea is that it doesn't happen to like white middle class women. Yeah. And like, it was definitely never talked about with my like family or, you know, and now more with my friends because it's on social media and like we see these stories and so we talk about them. Yeah. But I can't imagine, you know, my mum or her friends ever saying like, I know someone this happened to, and I think, and now as an adult, I'm like, of course it happened to people I knew. Like, it's just stats, and there's no way it didn't, and it has happened to my friends. But like that idea that it's just not really something that happens to people like us, I'm doing quotation marks, I think is still very prevalent, which is obviously really dangerous. And then also that othering, just to come back to like the social media thing with the like bombardment of information, it's also how that information is so quickly taken to the wrong conclusion. So like obviously we're seeing now the Reform Party trying to twist this into violence against women is because of immigrants and these kind of stories. And so again, it's like, yes, we might be finding out more about what's happening, but how quickly with social media is that then being used for a political gain or like a political angle rather than us kind of sitting with it, I guess, which is maybe that stillness thing of COVID where it's like information and action comes so quickly without having the time to be like, well, I don't know, what do I think about this? And what's the reality? I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, and I think also one of the difficult things as well is I was online because I wanted to understand some of what's been happening or some of what's happened to women in the past that has found its way to social media now. And it's like I go on one post of someone that I thought was a trusted source and they're spinning it in a way that brings clout to them. And then I go on to another source and they've got a whole other version of the story. And so I just feel like that's also not helping because it removes us away from the reality of the darkness that women have experienced to everyone's version, and whichever version becomes most viral becomes the most popular, prominent version, as opposed to what it actually is. And the fact that it doesn't matter how I perceive it as an individual, what matters is what happened and how we stop it from happening again. But it's like everyone's using this to build their own platform now. And so that makes it really hard as well, because it's like We just need to get the truth out there, and we need to find a solution from understanding the truth. And taking someone's story and making it a clickbait post can really water down that. And then so many people's comments are like, I don't believe this, or this is AI, or it just becomes so toxic.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add that even TikTok, and I remember when I was a bit younger, like about murders, even murders in general, they used to make like even like cartoons and talk about the documentary, and then you don't really sit back and realize that this is real people. Like this is not fiction. This is really real. And for people making it as clickbait and making it for views and for popularity is like, it's disgusting, really. And that leads me on to my next question, a little bit about media coverage and how do you think, I know we talked about a bit of the negatives, but what about the positives? How do you think it helps with the femicides and violence and bringing awareness to the violence against women?
I think seeing it does a lot. I think back in the day, before we had like social media, when I was young, I didn't really watch the news, so I didn't really know what was going on in that sense. So you kind of you weren't aware. Whereas social media, I feel specifically, has helped bring awareness to the fact that this exists, and to the extent it exists as well. So I think it does a good job in that sense. I just wish that there was more of a way to filter so we can know what the truth is, the exact truth, versus what's kind of exaggerated, or not exaggerated, but enhanced for someone's benefit, as opposed to kind of us really understanding what's happening. And then also I wish there was more of an action of what we're going to do, because after a while, seeing so much trauma can actually be very traumatizing, and can make people really scared. And that's one of my fears, is that when especially girls see this, how, like, I know how scared I used to be without seeing this stuff, walking home at night and having someone on the phone, or pretending someone's on the phone, having my keys out, checking, like watching my back constantly just to do like a really short walk from the bus stop to the house. So seeing all of this stuff online without seeing the solution makes me feel scared for girls that are watching this and thinking like, what's going to happen to them, or what hope do they have? But I think the reality of us being exposed to it and it not being hushed is important. So
definitely. I think like in recent years as well, there have been moments where like the mainstream media has done a great job of bringing together lots of isolated incidents and weaving like a useful narrative out of that. Like obviously Sarah Everard was like a key moment for the media to kind of finally say like, this isn't one story, this is like a big story, and we're going to take a moment and we're going to make it a narrative out of this, and we're going to talk about violence against women generally. I think like that's a positive, and a positive of social media as well, to be able to pull together lots of threads and say something bigger than just like the 2-minute headline that you get. There are some really good media companies. There's a podcast platform thing called Tortoise Media that I recommend a lot, because it's like slow news basically. They have this thing called the Slow Newscast, and when a story comes out, they will break it down into like 6-part hour-long episodes. And what they do really well with, they've done it with stories about violence against women and loads of stories, but they will break down from like the historical origins of something and all the things that led up to an event and the aftermath of an event. So it's less like the horror of one single moment and more a whole picture and a whole understanding. There's like some of these true crime cases as well, which can be done so badly and feel so glorifying of male violence and feel so horrible. Or, you know, podcasts like Serial, which I think really like opened us up to the world of violence against women. And yeah, so I think we're in like a weird media era where on the one hand we've got journalists doing better work than they've ever done before and like really examining things, and then at the same time we've got this weird like clickbait social media. So yeah, it's not all like doom and gloom for me with regards to that.
Deborah, I know you mentioned that the trauma of like and seeing all this trauma and the impact it has on little girls. Do you think the opposite of that it kind of desensitizes people to seeing these kind of news headlines sometimes, that if you see it so many times, eventually you'll be like, oh, there's another murder, or there's another killing of a woman, like, oh, what do we expect? That's kind of how our society goes. Do you think that happens?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. I think there's a group of people that will see that and they will be like outraged and they will like make as much noise as they can about it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a group of people that will see it and either look for holes in the stories as well.
Yeah.
Which is, it's difficult. I always say to myself, when I look at certain posts, just never go to the comments, because people will be looking for, why did this happen to that person? What did she do that caused this to happen? And I think that comes because people are desensitized, and they're used to the idea of blaming the woman. And so it's like, we might have been outraged by one woman's experience, and then we see another very similar experience, but it's like, we've seen it now. And so kind of people are just, and not, when I say I do not take that stance at all, but there's people that take that stance and then they start to poke holes and they're also not as vocal. So I do think it does have that effect, but I love engaging with and following women specifically that are very vocal about every situation, because it's so important, and they have strong followings of people that are also the same. But sometimes negativity can feel louder than positivity.
Agreed.
And so it's hard in moments for people to really focus on like the issue at hand. And I think, again, if there's no space to point to a concrete solution, after a while it just becomes more outrage and more outrage without like us changing it. The hope is that we get to a time where this isn't the reality for women, but the outrage and isolation of the solution is difficult.
It is. No, I 100% agree. And Kitty, I know you mentioned those podcasts. I'm going to write it down later underneath our Instagram post and after we post this. But even like journalism, another media format, I think that a lot of bias towards females, especially like within any situation, it's always the female's fault, obviously, that blaming of the victim. And a lot of those journalists, you could say that they're middle class white men that have, obviously, as you said, that othering, like that idea of them versus us sometimes. So obviously they, even though they might not actively say like, yeah, but is that conditioning of being in that family, that problem doesn't apply to them whatsoever. So they pretty much just go by what they think. And I guess that's what happened. Do you think that's what happens within like journalism especially?
Yeah, big time. Also, there is like a genuine, I've worked in media for 6 years now, and there is a genuine thing when you're broadcasting or writing to be, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, keep in mind like morale, and like that is always a bit of a consideration. Like when you're creating news, it's like fact versus just like how much horror can we put out in one bulletin. You know that joke about like the lighter side, like that is a genuine thing that every bulletin has, because it is that like it's meant to be entertainment at the end of the day as well as just fact. And I think like one of the things with violence against women, because it's 50% or more of the population that are affected in this case, there is like an instinct to spin it in a way that is like, but don't be worried because it won't happen to you. And I think that's what it's not meaning to be othering necessarily. It's more just, it is that thing of like, well, it's okay though. And I think even the way that we're told to like be careful walking home but not be careful getting into relationships is part of that, isn't it? It's like, but don't worry, it will only happen to you if it's really random, and then it would be so random it's not your fault, rather than like one day you might meet someone and you'll really love them and that's fine, and this might happen, and how do we teach about that? So like that's kind of my experience of media. I don't know if it's like really intentionally manipulative or just the way that those stories come out when you're trying to not frighten 50% of the population.
Exactly that. Which everyday behavior, attitudes or comments do you think society has normalized that indirectly contributes to gender-based violence? So for example, for myself, like catcalling is a huge thing that, like sometimes I shut it down straight away because it is not appropriate in in any way whatsoever. But yeah, that's an example of one. What do you guys think?
That's such a good one. I remember like going back to like primary school days, I guess, because I think like primary school attitudes are very interesting. Like kiss chase was like a massive game in school. I'm hoping this is like gone now.
Yeah,
but
we
like
don't know about it.
Okay, great. The game was literally that boys would chase you around the playground trying to kiss you, like literally chase you and like grab you and pin you down.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and like that was just a game, and I would like tell my mum about it, you know, and she'd never be like, well, I'm obviously going to the school to have words. It would just be like, haha, that's cute, that's what kids do. So I think like this kind of like primary school behavior is so odd, and putting those dynamics in first. And then also like maybe I don't really know how to put this, but like there have been multiple times in my life when I've been approached by like groups of men on the street, like busy streets, like outside clubs and things, and like drunk and like, you know, thinking they're being funny. But like that kind of like pack mentality where I'm just like, can you not see how threatening it is that you're all in a group and you're, even though it's just like maybe they're just coming to like chat and be silly or whatever. And I think that comes from like a weird lad culture of just like en masse we are unaware of like all the other people in our space,
like
and
a game,
how big we're being.
Who can see if she can get her or something.
So like the fun and the games and the like boy culture of it, I think.
I think also what you said about primary school reminded me of this idea that I feel it started in primary school and it continued actually, that if a boy is not, if he's mean to you, it's just because he likes you, because he fancies you,
or hits you,
so
or punches you, right?
Basically like it's fine, he just fancies you, like it's not a problem, and it's almost seen as cute, like that's his way of telling you he likes you, which is so problematic. And then also I just think, like you were saying, so much work and emphasis is placed on how girls and women are supposed to be and how you're supposed to show up. And very little emphasis is placed on like how boys are supposed to show up around girls. So it's like as girls you kind of are taught how to be in a relationship, but boys are just expected to know, because they're like the heads of the house, quote unquote. So it's like it also that puts a really weird kind of dynamic on it, and can give birth to what we see when it comes to violence against women.
And it's the fact that it's been, as you said, primary school, as young as children, as reception. You could even go back to nursery. I would even say socializing into boys playing with the building blocks, you know, being all, I don't know, you know, strong, and then the girls playing with like Barbie dolls or dolls to be like in a mothering kind of care. And if you say that it's been built up through, both of you said primary school, that just goes on throughout secondary, and then from secondary goes into sixth form, university, then it's relationships, then it's children, then it's workplaces, and then I guess that's how it's reproduced, essentially.
And like secondary, it was like goes from kiss chase to like boys literally following us home, and like shouting at us the whole way home, and that again is like a game they played. I'm like, crazy. What the hell? And then you can see how men as adults will follow women home, shouting at them because they're like, we just did this in school.
It's crazy.
Like, isn't that mad?
It's so crazy how that's normalized.
Teachers don't stop it though, do they?
No.
Either?
And also I feel like boys aren't taught, well, I can't completely generalize, but a lot of boys that I've come across aren't taught how to handle rejection.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I remember there was one time I was walking home and it was late, so I was already, my guard was already up, and there was a guy, I probably was like 18, 19, a guy like started shouting at me like to like come over to him, and so I just ignored him and I kept walking, and then it's like immediately turned to like violence, like keep walking or I'm gonna get you, or like all this stuff, and I was just like, but why? All I did was kept walking. And I think it's that idea of like he's not expecting rejection, and then when he is rejected, he just like, that was all he knew, that's the only way he knew how to react, because it's embarrassing and he didn't know how to deal with that.
I remember like, a specific post I saw, like someone had a similar experience like you, and the father just said, oh, you should have stopped and talked to them, but at that point, I don't know what is worse, to stop or to walk away, you know? And you're put in that situation where it's like, you just want to run, and you just want to run, you want to get away, and you just wish that never happened. And then you don't want to go out, and then you want to stay at home, and you're like, this will never end. This cycle will never end.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you want to say
Yeah,
anything?
I would like to add with like how we've been told to like use violence, like, oh, that's the way they like you, to portray that as like, oh, that's like how they have a crush on you and such as. And it's like with the idea of stalking as well, it's like, oh, stalking has been so like normalized nowadays that like serious stalking, like of course stalking is bad, but it's not taken to like accountability. It's not taken seriously within law enforcement. And I find that like stalking can, you know, just turn so quickly into extreme violence.
Yeah. That's where it starts, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, having like an old guy stalking you because like, oh, they have a little crush on you or such, and they view it as innocent, but really it's not. And for, you know, if you were to report that, it's like, oh, it's, you know, it's okay, it's normal. Yeah, they wouldn't take it seriously at all.
They wouldn't. I've seen so many documentaries and like read about it myself, where a woman has already been murdered, but going back years, 10, 20 years, you could even say, the first like hint, the first like thing to see was stalking. And she went to that police so many times, and they were just like, oh, just file something. And but then the process to actually get it taken seriously was it was too long. It was way too long, where she actually felt like giving up. So
and going back to that like normalized behavior, like if like we grew up in the like rom-com era, and like the moral of the rom-com era is like, if she says no, try, keep trying, knock on her door, go climbing through her window and lie in her bed and wait for her. It's like, wait, sorry, what? It's meant to be funny.
Throw eggs at her windows.
Don't take no for an answer.
Exactly. That's exactly how it gets built up, essentially. And my next question was, growing up, I know we already kind of talked about it. What advice or warnings, but specifically to like ladies who are listening right now, have you received for your safety, and how do you reflect on those messages now as an adult? Like, for example, my mom always said, have my keys with me. Like, essentially, we have no other way to protect ourselves. So she said, have your keys, make sure your keys are already ready when you're already at the front door so you can get in. But yeah, for you guys as well, what would you say?
Yeah, mine have been like, definitely keys.
Yeah.
Pretend you're on the phone, which, I mean, okay.
It
makes me feel better to be talking to someone because I'm distracted, but I don't know what that does. Don't walk home alone, like walk in a group, or like ideally get a man to walk you home, I guess is like their preferred solution. I would say like, I feel, back to what I was saying earlier, I think it ignores like the real instances where I'm likely to be unsafe, which are like with people that you know. And it's very like this one occasion when you're walking home that we're worried about you. I think it is really sad because it makes women so scared and like not want to go out. And to be honest, it's just like, it gives me fear the whole way walking home, regardless of whether anything's happened. And if anything does happen, it's not going to stop it me being terrified the whole way. Sometimes I wish like I didn't know those things.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just don't really know what the solution is there because I hate being scared.
Yeah, I've had the exact same. The only things I would probably add is just be vigilant, like constantly check if someone's walking behind you. I remember my dad said that I should record on my phone or like speak really loud and say like, someone's walking behind me. There was even, I didn't get advice when I was younger, but there was even a trend that went around on social media where a guy recorded himself responding to a conversation as though he was actually on the call. So that if a woman's in an Uber and she feels unsafe, she could just put him on speaker and pretend that she's having a conversation
on call,
with him. But it was like things like that, like kind of similar thing, like either be on the phone or pretend you're on the phone. I remember there was times where I literally ran home because I was just like, this is too much anticipation. Like I can't deal with the fact that someone might like turn up somewhere that I don't want them to be, so I'll run. Or if I saw like a guy walking behind me, I'd cross the road. Or if I saw them from across the road, I'd just keep looking just to make sure they don't get close enough. And I saw this woman recently on social media. She actually a man on social media, he posted about the fact that he was walking behind a woman at night and he could clearly see that she was scared.
So
She kept looking back. So he crossed the road and he even took a different, longer route home.
Yeah.
Just because he knew that how scared she was.
Yeah.
And I was like, if only more people did that,
I agree.
they would actually understand the extent of like the fear that's been ingrained in us that makes us feel like we have to have all this arsenal and stuff to prepare for being attacked, as opposed to the people shouldn't be attacking in the first place.
That's another positive of social media I wanted to add, like spreading this awareness first of all, but almost like people offering men and women like a temporary solution, you know, while society needs to figure out the root solution. But like even that one of pretending to be on call, or men actually spreading like, no, if you see a woman on the road on the same street as you cross. And I'm glad for myself, it makes me feel better that I know that some people out there would actually do that, you know, and it would make a lot of little girls feel better. But yeah, that's another positive of social media entirely. But what do you think stops women from speaking up and speaking out about situations that they've been in, or just something like that?
I think it's like, I don't know, but I imagine, you know, it's the double whammy of, one, it's like so common that it's just boring, like no one actually cares. It's so scary to admit something's happened, and it's such a big deal, and it might change everything. Like if you're getting all these horrible comments and all this attention, and still it might be that no one cares, which is really scary. And then also just that like embarrassment of like, it's my fault because I didn't do the things that I was told to do.
Exactly.
You know, like I've had it before when just I know I've gone home too drunk, for example, and then like someone's following me or like comes up to me or whatever, and you just get that thing of being like, I shouldn't have left on my own this drunk, like I shouldn't have done that immediately. And then that embarrassment of like, I did all the things I shouldn't have done, but times a million, I think is,
for sure.
Yeah, I think not being believed is a huge thing. I think there's so many instances where we've seen women who haven't got the justice that they deserve. And so I think people assume that, especially when it's famous women, if that woman of her caliber with all the money she has wasn't believed, what chance do I have? As I've spoken to a lot of women who have experienced or navigated violence, and that is one of the biggest responses that they've always given. It's like, who's going to believe me? Or for a number of them, they've shared it with people close to them, and the judgment they get from parents, friends, stops them, because they're just like, if my mum's asking me what did I wear, or if my friend's saying like, why did you trust that person, or why did you befriend that person, or whatever it is, then why would someone who doesn't even know me believe me? And then also I feel like there's shame, like you were saying, and I think shame thrives in silence. So the moment you keep it in, it's harder, and the longer you keep it in, it's harder to then share it.
For sure. And
it just kind of builds up, and you just tell yourself that there's something I did, or like you feel like a lot of the women feel embarrassed themselves that they did something, like you were saying, that landed them in this position, and they feel they put the responsibility on themselves first.
Do you think also like we maybe have a bit of a fear of like what will happen to men if we speak out?
Oh, 100%.
Because I do think like you talking about celebrities is like the perfect example of this, and like the idea that women are like genuinely worried about ruining men's relationships and weighing that up all the time. And I think that like are always putting other people first really comes into that. Yeah. Because it's not just like, will they be destroyed? Sometimes it's like, I think they might be destroyed, and I actually don't want to be responsible for that, you know, going back to school. Yeah. I don't want to be responsible for that boy getting suspended. Yeah. So I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of girls in my school, like, they didn't want to speak up because of they would be gone, or the boy would lose their football contract or something like that, and then the girls were like, nah, you know, we'll talk about it amongst ourselves, but we won't speak up to a teacher, which is ridiculous. I mean another example of it wasn't essentially like a murder of a female, but the Coldplay concert of the two the relationship between some CEO. I don't know if Benji, do you remember it? Or
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what he was the CEO of, but yeah, it was a big CEO and like his mistress or something. And the whole like mindset around it was, oh, she shouldn't be sleeping with a married man or whatever. And it's like, come on, man.
Like it was her fault, but it was both their choices that led to it. But yeah, that's just another example of a victim blaming, essentially. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was going to also add that there's like a normalization. That there are some individuals who think, oh, you should be happy that you're receiving this attention instead of being upset about it. It's like, that's not the case, you know. If you feel uncomfortable, you feel uncomfortable. You shouldn't be happy about it.
Yeah, or like, oh, there was some boy that everybody wanted, and then he's giving you attention. They're like, oh, I'm so jealous. I'm like, guys, no,
exactly.
That's not. But that's like another conditioning of like girls' brains, for example, like of them throughout school being like, yeah, we should be receiving attention, or I should be dressing like this to receive attention, but I shouldn't dress too much like that just to get the wrong attention. So it's just that constant like overthinking, and then people are like, oh, why are women such difficult people, which is ridiculous to say in the first place, but it's that experience of knowing what other people went through and what other women go through. That's why we think the way we do, because I don't essentially know, again, not to generalize, but like a man who just he gets too drunk and he goes home by himself, but obviously because you thought about it and you've went through and be like, okay, maybe I should have not done that. But I don't know someone who's a man who's thought that way before, essentially. But yeah, my next question would be, what do you think it actually looks like for society to take femicide seriously in a structural sense, beyond awareness campaigns or symbolic gestures?
Do you know what the thing is? Do you have something you want to say? Yeah. Go on. No, go.
I'd say 100% big first step is for every single man to fully understand and realize that they are always going to have social power over a woman.
Yeah.
And that a lot of men are like, oh, I'm not abusing women. It can't be my fault. But like, no, it's partially everyone's fault, 100%, especially men. And it's like, often you see men and their friends have committed some sort of horrible crime towards a woman, and they're like, oh, I don't know, there are no signs. It's like, no, there are always definitely signs.
Yeah.
And it's like, teach that kind of awareness in schools to everyone. I don't know, you know, it's like,
no, I think we have to go we would have to go through every system that a woman and girl passes through in her life, from the time she's born to the time that she leaves the world, to understand how those systems support the power dynamics that have enabled femicide to exist, and then to analyze it within those systems what needs to be done to right the wrong. Because I just feel like it's so big and it's so in depth and it's so ingrained, even down to the books that we read in school, and a lot of them written by men, the way boys are positioned versus girls in school, girls being encouraged to take certain subjects and boys being encouraged, like all of those things have to do with why femicide even is a thing, why it exists. And so we'd have to break down how the patriarchy exists in all those environments, and how the patriarchy doesn't serve anyone in those environments, and then start to kind of almost remove all of those all of that conditioning. Now I think with the younger generation, I've got kids 5, 3 and 1. With them, it would be easier to ingrain it in them, because I know that I'm their mum and their dad's their dad, and we believe what we believe. But it goes down to teachers. It goes down. It's literally so big, and that's why it's so hard to think of like one way to solve it. It literally is a rewiring of how we see women in society, and having those conversations consistently, and helping men from a young age, but also men who are older, to understand how we've landed in this position. It's not enough to say not all men, because women that are walking on the street in the dark don't know which man, like,
Could they wear a t-shirt?
100%. Like, we don't know. And so it's important for everyone should be educated. But one of the hardest things is, I always give this analogy. I can tell Kitty, for example, I can say to you, drink water because it's so important for you. And eventually you might start drinking it because you believe everything I've said and I've given a really convincing argument. But if you don't believe it for yourself, a week will come, 2 weeks will come, and you'll stop drinking it. To get someone to believe something themselves and act on that belief is what makes it really hard. And that's why it's like, I think so many people pour themselves into the next generation, because the hope is that they will be different.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we're now building a generation that has access to all of this content in a way that other generations haven't, and we're not equipping them or supporting them with how to navigate it. So now they're dealing with their own stuff so it's like, it's so nuanced. But I think you'd have to start with all of the systems, break them down, how does this show up,
For sure.
and then deal with it person by person, which is yeah.
I mean, we're an example of the next generation, I guess. I mean,
100%.
we're trying our best. Everyone in this room, I've made sure to convert them all to feminists. Trust me, in our classes, it's really funny. We're always calling out everyone interrupts one of the girls. Benji's always like, no, let her talk or something. But I guess this is exactly how it starts, and from us it will just go, it will be better and better, and I think that's the key to it, as you said. But Kissy, do you want to add?
No, I think what you're saying about, holding your friends accountable, holding the men accountable, and also looking at everyone and not thinking like, well, I have a good experience with that person, which we're all very capable of, so therefore, like, I'm just assuming that they would never do anything like that. It's like, you don't know. You don't know what people are like in relationships, or when it's not with the people that they love. So I think, it's really, really important to look at that. There was something you were saying about all the structures that go back, and it's completely gone out of my head. But like, it's good. It's going to take so much unpacking and looking back and reflecting on how we consume news. Oh, that was it. The idea of the patriarchy and how it doesn't serve anyone. And I think with all the like Andrew Tate media that everyone's consuming now and all this stuff, and it is really important that we do look at like the expectations that are on men properly, and the expectations that are on all of us, and like little things like beauty standards, or the way that we feel so rubbish about ourselves if we're not with someone. I mean, we're still in a society, like, the reason that society wants us to be in couples is because it's better for the economy, and like, that's it. And we don't need to keep, this doesn't need to be the way that we live our lives. But the fact that men can feel so rejected and so worried about not being loved that they will turn to violence is such a big problem. And like, I know men, I know family members, people that I love, that have this feeling that like, I'm not good enough and I'm ugly and
of course
no one will ever be with me.
And
find this content and just start lapping up, and you have to really step back and be like, what are you worried about and what are you unhappy about?
Exactly.
And to give like young boys the same like love and validation I think that we would give our female children as well, like when like telling them they're pretty and like they're worth something, and that whole, when like my parents were always saying to us like, oh well, you'll find someone and you'll have all these great loves and it'll be all this that thing. Doing the same thing with boys, and like when they go through breakups in school, like taking them seriously and really like working through the emotions of those breakups with them, because they are hard when you're 13. And I can see that if my breakups have been dealt with differently, like, and my friends had just made fun of me rather than been like, oh, even though you're 13, it was your first crush and you're really upset about it, what would that have done to me? Like, I don't know. So that was my
implementing those types of things, even mentors within schools, is so critical for like the movement of having a more positive attitude. And even like recently I wanted to add or not recently, even since I was a child, I've always been asked about marriage, first of all, children, and even having it been my birthday recently, they were like, oh, so when are you going to get married? And I was like, I don't think so. I'm okay right now. And they were like, okay, what about children? I was like, you know, it does show that change of attitudes. Like it was an elder woman, and my attitude towards hers, it was completely different. But I think that's that next step to progress, not having these different types of values, or me wanting a career, you know, unlike women or females, even children, you know, teenagers 20, 30, 40 years ago, who only saw their future in a marriage, mostly domestic abuse a lot of the time, children, having plenty of children, cooking and domestic labor roles as well within the household, and that's all they saw their future as. But I guess since society's changing a little bit more, women and children are beginning to see more for themselves, that they can have more outside of relationships, more outside of children. So it's really incredible. Did you want to add something, Belle?
I just wanted to add, like what Deborah mentioned about not all men. And there was this comment that I saw on social media, and it said, the unspoken rule of loaded guns, you will always be careful with the weapon, even if it has no bullets. And it's like, there was this video that I saw that there's a gradient chart of, the top violent men, and then you have the middle, the bystander effect, the bottom, small majority of men agreeing that, like, yes, absolutely, there are violence against women. And, you know, I just wanted to point that out because I think it's important for people to realize, yes, not all men, but there are some aspects of men not speaking up when they see violence against women, not acting up against violence against women.
Yeah,
and such.
just seeing those little hints, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just straight away speaking out. I mean, we're already trying on our best, so even having everyone as a society in general to put that action forward and to change is so important. What other support could you both advise anyone to listening who doesn't know where to go, whether they're in a relationship or in a situation they're quite unsure about? If you don't know from the top of your head, that's fine, but if you do.
Something, it just slipped my mind. A company that exists, but I don't have anything from the top of my head.
Yeah, but this is another thing, like even in my interviews previously, I asked them, do you know any places where you could suggest for a woman to go if she's like been through something? They all said no. Every single person I've asked,
I mean, there's
is
like
no.
big charities and things like obviously Refuge, support women that have experienced domestic violence. Because this is a youth radio station, like if you're under 18, like Childline will support as well with any relationships. And I think, if you are just in a relationship and you're like, there's something a bit weird, or I'm not quite sure, but that feeling of like, I don't want to get him in trouble, or I don't want to tell my friends, like they know and they can help you. And also just it's really important to chat to people.
Exactly.
So
one of the charities that I was thinking about, I just checked them on Instagram, is called Sister Space. I know that they do a lot of work when it comes to domestic abuse specifically, but they also talk about violence against women and girls. So that it is a really big question actually of where do people go, and I think also where do people trust to go, like, because it takes a lot for people to communicate what they've gone through. But it's a good question I'm going to take away, because I think it's important, even from my standpoint of talking about a solution. What does a solution look like, and where do people go for that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and I think that's something I wanted. I didn't want to put you guys on the spot, but it just shows how much we know, but how little we know sometimes as well, to that first step of that solution. But essentially what you guys said, and campaigns like this, it would definitely help the future. And my final question would be, what advice would you give to a little girl growing up in today's society?
My advice would be just really value your female friendships. Like really hold them close, and really value your like collective intelligence and outlook on the world. One of the things that I've noticed is like when I was in university, we would have these kind of conversations all the time. It was like part of the environment that we were in, or in college when I was studying politics. Like I started a feminist society in sixth form. And we'd do this every week, you know, we'd have a different topic every Friday and we'd meet up and we'd discuss it. And that was like really amazing. We got Caroline Lucas to visit and all this stuff. And like having those spaces where you can all just like openly share your experiences and your opinions in like that kind of debate context, that discussion context where it feels like there's weight to what you're talking about is so important. Because when it's just these like tiny little stories, these tiny incidents, you don't have the hour that we've just had to like sit and reflect. You just forget, and you forget about like how much it matters, and you forget about solutions. And already now, like, I'm going to leave this conversation being like, I do care, and I've remembered I care, and I'm going to go and think about everything we've just said. And I've learnt loads just from hearing you, Deborah, talk for half an hour. I've learnt something. And without those spaces where women can talk, we forget that. So like obviously I manage a youth radio station. Spaces for people to talk are so important to me, and the amount you learn when you're just with people who've gone through the same things. So don't like undervalue that. It doesn't have to be like restructuring the government immediately or restructuring the police. It can just be like
little steps.
Let's just chat about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm going to piggyback off that, Kitty, because I think conversations are really important. And I also feel like I love the fact that you're in a mixed group.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like these conversations often, people feel, from speaking to a lot of girls, they feel like boys and girls are like divided on complete opposite sides. And obviously the reality of what that can give birth to as you get older is that it's like a division of the genders,
like
and
boys
that
versus
doesn't
girls,
it doesn't serve anyone, doesn't help anyone. It's so important that everyone's involved in the conversation, because what we don't want is a repeat of what has happened where one gender is above the other, in quotes. It's about us coming together. So I feel like having the conversations together collectively, understanding how girls think, how boys think, how everyone thinks is so important, and being able to dialogue, because there's so many things, like you were saying, Kitty, that I've learned in this conversation, but then also the fact that everyone can be part of the conversation is even more powerful. And then what I'd also add for a young girl growing up is to just take so much time, more time than ever, to understand yourself and value yourself. And because self-worth is so important. And I wish someone told me that when I was younger. I'm 34 now, and I feel like it's probably the last couple years that I've started to really appreciate my worth. And if I had appreciated it younger, I probably would have made different decisions. And I just feel like it's so important to know who you are, love who you are. And even if who you are isn't who you want to be, in certain ways, you might want to be more confident, you might want to be more, whatever it is, more creative. Love the version of you that you are. You will never be that version again. And it will only, you will only grow more. And growth doesn't happen by age as much as it happens by intention. It's, someone could be 18 and then be 30 and still have the same mindset and the same way of being. You have to be intentional that I'm going to develop into a new person and become a new person. So yeah, that's what I wish someone would have told me.
I love that. No, that's really inspirational, and it's really, really important for anyone listening right now. But I would like to thank everyone here today. It has been such a pleasure. Belkiza, Yasmina, Benji, Felix, Deborah, and Kitty, thank you all for being here, and thank you for taking time out of your day to speak about this issue. But I've been Michelle on Radio Lewisham, and everyone have a good afternoon.